Vanguard newspaper recently looked at the Nigeria's real estate sector and spoke to players within the space to ask how they feel the sector will perform in 2021. One of them was quite optimistic. Here's a quote here from one of the players. Real estate still remains the asset of choice when it comes to investment, and this has proven more than ever before to be so in 2020. Buyers should be careful where they put their money in 2021. Extensive research should be carried out before making any investments to ensure they work with companies with a proven track record. Coming from Abdul Malik Mahid, a managing partner at Modern Shelter Systems and Services Limited. So, is real estate the asset of choice compared to other asset classes? Joining us to discuss the sector is Mr. Kunle Osilaja, real estate financier and consultant. He's led refinance businesses for firms such as Jones Land LaSalle in Europe for many years, and later even EcoBank Transnational Incorporated. You're very welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. So to begin, I do throw the question to you: is real estate in Nigeria the asset of choice compared to other asset classes?
Rotos, real estate plays an important part in any portfolio for institutional and individual investors. The reality is that real estate, in terms of size, is only generally for larger institutions about 5 to 10% of their portfolio. But for individuals, it occupies perhaps the largest asset that any individual will own, either for occupation or for investment. So real estate is very important and is certainly an asset of choice for continued participation in portfolios.
Thank you so much for that. I want to take a look at the, GDP performance, GDP chart here for real estate. From the chart, it showed real estate sectors was in contraction territory before COVID-19. How would you assess the impact of the pandemic on the sector?
The reality is that real estate performance tracks general economy. As much as the economy is buoyant, real estate tends to be buoyant. As the economy is slow, real estate also follows that trend. And as you've seen the dip in the general economy of the world, real estate performance is sort of tracks that. The important thing in terms of what has happened with the pandemic is that apart from the physical impact on human beings, the social impact of restriction on travel movement has had a big effect on different asset classes. If we categorize the assets into winners and losers, just to clarify things, the main losers in this, because of restriction on travel and movement, is the leisure and the hospitality sector, where there has been less occupation of hotels, etc. The other impact is in the retail sector, where there's been an acceleration of what I call e-commerce. That had been starting probably in the last 20 years, but because of COVID-19, that has accelerated. The winners, on the other hand, are the fact that you're now having the changing structure of retailing. You now have retail changing where you have logistics needed, just-in-time delivery of services and goods. Means industries will grow. The new impact also is things in the healthcare industry. Because of the impact of COVID-19 on the general world economy, people are now looking at healthcare as an important thing. So we see that as winners of what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. In between us, you have the office element where, give or take, there's a halfway house. Some losers and some winners.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So, and while we're looking at winners and losers and the impact of COVID on the real estate sector, are the increased number of people working from home due to the pandemic, is that a death knell for the commercial real estate market?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I have been through and I've seen recessions so many times. I think because human beings, we are social animals, there will still be the need to interact. As of now, as we see the impact of either vaccine or the lessening structure of COVID-19 on human nature, I think the social interaction will come back. At the moment, what has happened is that there's been a growth in SMEs. Most of the larger buildings that have not been taken are being looked at and being turned into smaller accommodations. And you find that because the SME has grown, there's still the need for people to interact, and some of these either offices or hotels. In fact, what you'll find is that accommodation in real terms has even grown because you have short-term requirements, short-term living, whereby professionals are taking accommodation for short-term spaces. So I don't think it's a death knell on real estate. I think it will continue to grow, but there's certainly a time now where things are a bit hazy.
Fantastic. Now, is there a post-pandemic road to recovery for real estate in 2021 or 22 or beyond?
Oh, certainly. I'm a great believer in real estate, whether as an investment or occupation. As human beings, as I said earlier, we will need accommodation, either to trade or either to meet. In fact, what is happening in other parts of the world is that although the requirement to have physical meetings has reduced, people still have touchdown places, whether it is going to be weekly, fortnightly. All the larger companies still need accommodation. In fact, rather than for them to contract the space they're using, they're only using it with distancing, so that when they were having one person per 10 square meters, it's now one person per 20,000 square meters, per 20 square meters. And in reality, that means it's the same type and size of accommodation they're requiring. I see real estate to be stable and to come back within the next 12 to 24 months again.
Mr. Osilaja, thank you so much for that answer. I want to ask you about risks, because I want to go to Obalende very quickly, and just give us a moment, sir. For our viewers, Pandemonium broke out in the early hours on Thursday at Obalende area of Lagos Island following violent clashes between rival groups of National Union of Road Transport Workers, NURTW. That's today, actually. Yeah, today, Thursday. According to sources, people were seen running in different directions for safety, while several properties were said to have been destroyed. Scores of people also said several people sustained injuries, and we're seeing video, amateur video, being taken of those clashes, which occurred, of course, again earlier today, Thursday.
An open warfare.
All right, once again, for our viewers, Pandemonium broke out in the early hours of this morning at Obalende area of Lagos Island following violent clashes between rival groups of NURTW, National Union of Road Transport Workers. According to sources, people were seen running in different directions for safety, while several properties were said to have been destroyed. Scores of people also are said to have suffered injuries. All right, we'll bring you more as the story unfolds. Mr. Osilaja, issues like that, are those the kind of risks, this risk to property that the real estate sector has to be, cognizant of in the country? What we're just seeing now in Obalende.
Yes, I mean, that's just life. I think it's just, it's tiny. It affects any type of asset class, not just real estate. And if you hold real estate, you have to think about long term. You can't think of real estate as something that you go in and out of very, very quickly. Even the ability to trade into and trade out of it takes 3-6 months. So longer term investment is what real estate is all about, whether it's for your own occupation or for a part of your portfolio. Real estate behaves like bonds in most instances. Right. So you have to think of it medium to long term.
Thank you. In fact, speaking of, I guess, patient capital, while you've mentioned that, there's a healthy number of empty residential properties around Nigeria for sale that seem to ignore the laws of demand and supply. They remain empty for months, years, no buyers or renters, but their prices remain unchanged. What can we attribute that to? Can we attribute that to, money laundering or an illiquid system? How would you see it?
I think it is both, to be honest, and it is not just in Nigeria. If you think about other parts of the world, whether it is in London or in New York, you have the the growth of monies that have gone into either from Russian oligarchs or Russian or Chinese investors into central London or indeed New York, not dissimilar to what is happening in Lagos or Abuja, where there is hidden capital that requires or does not require immediate return, what I call normal immediate return. And people can afford to lock those assets up. Where the source of capital may be questionable. In most instances, it is, but it is there. The only thing, and what has happened in other parts of the world, is that there is legislation that is enacted by those governments to force those owners to either let or sell or do something, rather than to lock up assets for 10 years onwards without doing anything. If you have normal capital, you will always want some form of return. And so it doesn't make sense to lock up assets for 1, 2, 3 to 10 years. So it has to be some form of legislation to force people to do it. But it is not peculiar to Nigeria. It is in other parts of the world as well.
Thank you for that, sir. Federal government of Nigeria recently announced a vehicle financing program for Nigerians that's yet to be launched. It calls for a 10% down payment on a vehicle with the balance finance over a period of time. It hasn't been specified yet. Using that as a reference point, what do you make of our mortgage system in Nigeria in terms of interest rates for financing and the length of time allowed to pay off mortgages?
Look, the problem on interest rate of mortgages in Nigeria has been one that the market has looked at several times. The biggest problem is, there are three main problems. One is on the demand side, the adequacy of assets which can be traded and can be bought and traded by human beings. So there's need for those assets to be constructed. Two, our legal structure is very tight and very tough. It's very difficult to foreclose on assets. It's difficult to get title. It's difficult to be transparent in terms of due diligence on mortgagors. But more importantly, the difficulty in getting long-term capital. Because capital has to be, one, patient. It has to have 10, 20-year span before you can lend. And also, you must be in single digits for people to be able to want to take mortgages for 10 or so years, 10, 20 or so years. And that's been the structural problem within the system. The government has to come in, one, to help fund or provide the capital for the mortgage end. Two, there's need to then have some seasoning where the assets needs to be recycled by either the NMRC or institutions such as that by way of securitization. But more importantly, there needs to be short-term capital for developers to be able to build assets which can be taken up very quickly. And I'm not talking of, I'm talking of mass building. That is manufacturing of homes, not just building 10 or so units. So right. All of those things are the structural problems that we have. But it's going to happen with time.
Fantastic stuff. Mr. Kunle Osilaja, real estate financier and consultant, thank you so much for your insights on the real estate sector in Nigeria. Appreciate them very much.